Gregory.
Hi, how's it going, Catherine?
Good. Welcome to CtheG TV. This is Gregory Berg, and he's such a great human being, and I'm so excited and honored to have the opportunity to have a conversation with you today. I met Gregory when we were at the WDS World Domination Summit this past year, and I learned that you interview people from WDS, and I knocked on your door. Hello, can I have an interview? And that was really my first interview ever on radio, and I just was very inspired by how ready, educated, and you just seemed to know what you were doing. And then I went to your website and realized, yes, you have years and years and years of experience doing this. There is a reason why this is flowing so well. But I was inspired by that, and you are continuing to grow and expand your business. And I'd like to talk to you about that, because this show really is about owning your greatness. And I find that it's really easy for us to talk about the things that we're not, and not really stay and stand strongly in the things that we are. And so what I'd like for you to do is tell me today, how did you know that this would be the path for you, and how did you stand in your greatness when you were asking the people that you admire and are inspired by to interview them? What was that process like for you?
Cool. Well, I'll take that in a couple parts. The first of all, and I'm hearing some feedback here. I'm sort of hearing myself. I don't know if that's
it's okay on my end, so we'll just keep it rolling.
We'll keep it that way. So let me see. I'm going to turn down my headphones here.
Okay.
Because it was driving me a little crazy. I was on sort of a delay there.
Got it.
All right. So first of all, I guess sort of backtrack a little bit. You said that the starting Radio Enzo. Radio Enzo is the online radio show that I do, a podcast or online radio show, whatever you want to call it. I call it Tools and Inspiration for Conscious Living, and I started that about 1.5 years ago. And as you mentioned, I was incredibly fortunate to have a background in broadcasting and a background as an interviewer in a variety of different places. And it's one of those situations where your life is not a straight line. It's this sort of winding path, and you have all these disparate experiences that, especially when you're younger, you wonder, how did the dots connect here? I did this one thing that's way over here, and then I did this other thing that's way over here. Where's this leading? What is this heading towards? You don't know those things when you don't see the dots connecting. And so when I was a very young kid, I thought I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to be, when I was sort of into sports as a kid, I wanted to be a sportscaster at one point, and then I wanted to be a news guy. And I went off to the University of Missouri to study journalism at an acclaimed journalism school there in the state where I grew up. And at some point I changed my mind, and then I wanted to be a rock and roll DJ. And I worked my way up in radio and worked in radio. Sort of alternative rock radio back in the mid to late 80s, early to mid 90s, and did a bunch of that. And at the time, what I didn't realize was I was building this skill set of things like interviewing that, I was part of my job I loved and part of my job I didn't love. And that's the case for many of us. But I was learning how to interview people, and I guess I've always had this natural curiosity on what makes people tick. And how their history comes into play with where they are now. And I love going back and looking at those things. And regardless of whether I was working in an industry or a career, a job or a project that involved those things or not, I've used that lens to look at everything I've done in my life. And so there's always that curiosity there. And so in the mid-90s, I got out of radio. It was sort of a very cheesy business for me. There was a lot of selling of things that I didn't love, and it was very, very cheesy. They wanted me to sound all hyped up and be this sort of cartoon character that I wasn't, and I didn't love that.
Yeah.
And I've always been a person who's really had to feel good about what I'm doing to collect a paycheck. Obviously at times of desperation, you don't always have that choice, but in the long run, I wanted to pursue work that made me feel good, sort of at a heart level. And so I got out of radio, and I had been out of radio for, I believe, 18 years, which is amazing. And I never, during that time, thought, wow, someday I'd like to be in radio again. But I always knew that I loved interviewing people, and I had this curiosity about how things worked and how people worked. And over the past 10 years, I've been on a path of personal development for my own life for a variety of reasons. And, I guess primarily for my own life, trying to sort of get my life together, to be happy, to learn about how does the universe work, why are we here, all these big picture questions. And I've been on my own path for that time looking at those things. And as you mentioned, we met at the World Domination Summit, WDS, in Portland, Oregon. And I was at WDS 1 back in 2011, and I was so blown away by the experience. And I remember thinking through the whole weekend, I'm meeting these people that are, either changing the world or they're talking about changing the world. I want to know more about these people. What's their story? I want the world to know more about what they're doing. Some of them were successful bloggers. Some of them were people that just had ideas about doing these amazing things. And I thought, well, I'd really love the world to find out more about these people. What can I do to continue the conversations that started there? And so it was on the airplane ride home from WDS1. I remember sort of furiously scribbling notes. And then the light bulb went on, like, wait, you used to work in radio. There's all this technology now that lets you, have something like your television show here or my online radio show. Why don't I start a podcast, an online radio show? Why don't I do this thing? Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows, what my interests are, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. And so I remember, thinking, okay, well, I met a few people that I think if I asked them up front would say yes to this. And so I met Dave Ursillo, an amazing young guy who's really doing tremendous work. I met him in the food truck line. There was an after party. There was like a Korean taco truck there. And we were, chatting in the taco truck line. And I had been following Dave's blog for a while, and I thought he was an impressive guy. And I just had the sense that, if I asked him, he would say, sure, I'll do this thing. And so asked my first guest. He said, sure, I'll do it. And
awesome.
So it was this sort of domino effect of like, okay, well, he said yes. And then the second person I asked said yes. And then they both said, well, you should check out this person. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to be really, I'm going to try something really crazy here. Jonathan Fields was at the conference. He's sort of like in the blogosphere, in the world that I hang in.
Yeah.
He's, something of a big deal.
Right.
Like, he doesn't know who I am. I'm going to try asking Jonathan Fields. And so I asked him, and he politely declined and said, check back, I'm busy. And then I asked him again, and he politely declined. And we sort of went on this roundabout for about 6 months. And finally he said, okay, I'll do it.
Woo!
Sure. I think I wore him down. So anyway, I'm sort of meandering off of your question here.
No,
but
it's
the
great.
point is that I didn't overthink these things. I didn't overanalyze them. I didn't let fear get the best of me. There were these moments where I thought, well, I'm just this guy out there on this path who's trying to get answers for myself, selfishly, and for the world that we live in. I want to help other people. It's part of what I do, what I want to do. And, why can't I do this? Why can't I be a guy who provides a channel, a vehicle to spread the message of what these people are doing? And so here we are, 71 episodes later,
wow.
here in February 2013, and we're still rolling. And I guess this will sound a little bit funny, but I've been incredibly inspired by Oprah Winfrey. Mm-hmm. And I am male and white, so a little difference there. But I sort of aspire to be this sort of in my own way, kind of what Oprah has done. Somebody who's had people on her show that interest her, especially in recent years. It's been somebody that, she only has guests on her show that she wants to learn from, that she's interested in their story. She learns from them. She assimilates that information into her own life, and then she does everything in her power as this sort of media, mogul as she's become, to help sort of spread that in whatever way that she can. And I guess that's sort of what I aspire to.
Wow. I love that. And I got goosebumps several times throughout your explanation of how you got where you are and what inspires you to do this work. And I think you and I have something in common around that curiosity piece. I am very curious about, in business, I'm curious about how to make a business run. That, it's like a chess game to me, and I want to figure out all the pieces. And so that keeps me inspired and interested. And the minute that I'm not, I will have to change my direction, if I get bored. But I feel the same way about people and what they've gone through and curious. And I love that you said that same thing about being curious about them. And also that you said, why can't I? Why can't I be the guy who, interviews these people and shares that wisdom with others? Because and I have to say that you were at that first WDS where it was 500 people. So I think there was a different level of intimacy. And in this last time where I met you, there were 1,000, and the next time it's going to be 3,000, and so it's just
Yeah.
going to keep growing and growing. And you have such a wealth. You have an opportunity already because you've created the platform to continue that conversation with all these new people that are going to be there. That's amazing to me, and congratulations on all the interviews that you've done. And now,
Thank
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm
Thank you, but no, but every the things change over time, and so for instance, this past year at the one that we attended, Dr. Brene Brown was a guest, for
Yes.
instance, and when she was a speaker there, I had watched, I had seen a bit of her TED talk and knew a bit about who she was, but I had no idea that she was this woman that was about to just explode onto the, literally, to where she's on Katie Couric and
Yeah.
in Oprah magazine and on every media outlet, big time media outlets around the United States, and so she was so inspirational to see as a speaker, and I thought I have to find a way to see if she'll be on my show, and so of course the inner critic always says, well, who are you? Brene Brown's going to laugh at you, radio what? What's this little podcast thing you got going here? But but it can't happen until you try something. What do I have to lose? So
What do you have to lose? Yeah.
And so part of it is the art of putting together a good pitch, and then part of it's just utter luck and timing. And I think it was a little bit of all three of those things. I learned in my career in marketing and advertising over the years to write a good pitch letter and figure out how I can sort of approach people without coming off as too cheesy, maybe. Hopefully. But then part of it's just total luck and timing. And so for whatever reason, her people got back to me and said, yeah, we'll do this thing. And I remember the night that she was on my show, she was calling in from a hotel room in New York where she was to be on Katie Couric's show. And she said, I'm sorry, I only have a half hour to do the interview tonight. Normally my shows are an hour. And I said, that's fine. I'll half an hour is great. I'll take exactly what I can get. And she's like, yeah, when I get off the phone with you, Forbes is calling.
No way.
And I was like, Forbes? Like me and Forbes? I'm just some guy here in this room,
Yeah, I love that.
But, but I guess the point of all of this is that, everybody starts off as some guy or some woman in rooms like we're in, our office spaces, studios, whatever we call them. But if we really want to make a difference, if we really want to serve the planet, we've got to do it. This is our chance. We live at a time where we're so fortunate. We have all this amazing technology that allows us to connect with people anywhere in the world and do it instantaneously and at a quality level. And we have the entire world's history and information at our fingertips via the internet. So it's easy to research things or to learn new things. And I just feel like we're so blessed to have all that. We've got to take advantage of that.
That's a great point. I love that you really are like standing on the mountain, like, let's do this, and that there are others that, the World Domination Summit, that energy is so vibrant when we're there, and we all want to do that, and yet that self-doubt comes in, or like Forbes and me, like, no, I'm not even going to try. But the fact that you try anyway, and I mean, that's where to me, that's your greatness. That's where you don't allow the thoughts to run the show,
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you don't have bad days.
Right.
It's funny that we're having this conversation today because, I consider myself a pretty happy guy, pretty positive. I always feel pretty good about my situation and really feel good about the show and where things are going. But, you go through ups and downs. And even just the past few days, I've been having some difficulties lining up some guests that I've talked about coming on the show. You don't hear back from them. You don't hear back from their people. Some things happen that make you question, like, where am I going with all this? What's this doing? And you have the doubt creeps in.
Absolutely.
And you have those days where you think, wow, what am I doing here? What is this?
Yeah.
But then what's beautiful about this community, whether it's WDS or any other sort of community, the community that you've created with with photography and the retreats that you do, and the summit that you hold online every day, that your community that you've built, and whatever community people have found themselves in, it's really crucial that you connect with those people, because you have those people as a support system, as people that sort of remind you, they're able to hold the mirror up to you and say, hey, look, what you're doing is awesome. And, sometimes it's hard to remember that. Sometimes it's hard to remember where this is going. Why do you put all these time, effort, hours, energy into something that you're not really sure where it's going, or what the outcome, because you don't see a concrete thing in front of you.
Right.
You're just sort of diving straight ahead. And that's tough. And so I think that's what's best about having these communities, is immersing yourself with people of like-minded philosophical bent, of like-minded goals, people that are sort of aiming for the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I love this technology we have, because then we can go on our social media, we can email back and forth, we can tweet, we can Skype. We can do these things that remind us, yeah, you know what, we're all sort of heading towards the same thing. We all want the same thing. And if we support each other, we're going to get there quicker.
I love it. Well, and it's so true, because I do the same. And I think a lot of us who have our own businesses, we're by ourselves, we're online, we're looking at other people's papers instead of keeping our eyes on our own stuff. And we're getting a little caught up in the rat race, or the fear of, like, if I don't do it now, then I'm going to lose my chance, or somebody else is going to do it before me and I got to go. And it's all fear, instead of like really knowing what the purpose is behind the reason that you wanted to do the interview show, or why I wanted to start CtheG TV, or why, the bigger why about it. And then when those things don't happen, or some people are saying no, or things aren't lining up, then all that questioning comes in. And it's true. Like, I need a support system around me to remind me, like, just keep going. Maybe that person said no because there's someone better that will fit your vision even better, that you don't know yet. You don't know what's happening on the other side of that doorway that's getting closed or redirected. So
absolutely.
And one thing I want to bring up about the community piece is, when I read your about page, you are very involved in a lot of different things. I mean, you are a photographer, but you're not just a photographer. I noticed that you go out with other people that are photographers and you shoot, with them. I mean, a lot of us are photographers, and it's the same thing. Like, we're creating our work on our own, but you actually have taken that next step. And you're a musician, and you're in a band. You're not just playing on your own. You're actually saying yes to being around other people that are doing the same thing. And you're in Kundalini yoga and meditation. And I think that you went to a class. It wasn't something that you just did on your own. You actually, and that seems to be, and I have a similar trait where I want to learn things, and I don't want to just do them alone. But I think you take it to another level, because it is building community. You do post about the other people that you've met in your photography groups. I was just on there looking at a video you made about a camera pack that you all were looking at. And I find that really wonderful about you. And it teaches me something too, because I tend to isolate, or I don't want to be part of the group because I'm afraid, or I don't have the time, or I don't want everyone to think that I believe everything if I'm in that group, or whatever it is that goes on.
Typecast.
Whatever it's going on from high school that I haven't left in high school. But you encourage me to keep going, and I think that you interviewing people from World Domination Summit and just sort of breaking the barriers between, like, who's here and who, we're all just curious, and we're trying to do something that's meaningful. And I just want to express that I am very inspired by all the ways that you do create community, and how many different areas you are curious about, and that you actually take action. I think a lot of us want to learn how to play something, or a lot of us want to do yoga, but we don't have time. We don't take the time. There's a lot of self-care going on there. And I'm sorry I'm talking so long. I wanted to bring it back to the fact that when you were 18, you were in a really horrific car accident, and that it shifted your perception. And I'd love for you to talk about that, and how that has impacted all the ways that you are now creating community and doing the things that you want to do. And you did a 365-day photo exploration, and now there is a new one every year that you pick, something that you want to discover about yourself and the world. And so I'd love for you to just talk about that, how the car accident impacted everything that you do today.
Yeah, sure. Well, when I was 18 years old, I was just a kid like anybody. I lacked perspective. I grew up a pretty sheltered kid. And my senior year in high school, near the end, about a month or two away from graduation, some friends and I went out, and it was the one and only time in my entire high school career where I skipped school. We were the bad kids. We left school because our school wouldn't allow us to leave at lunch. And so we thought, well, we'll go to lunch. And, we drove to some fast food restaurant or something and ate, and we were on the way back, and it started to rain. And long story short, we flipped a small tramp Spitfire down a 20-foot embankment and flipped it all the way around and ended up on the other side, and were knocked out unconscious. And the paramedics got there and thought we were all dead. And there was about this much space between the front bumper of the car and where my knees were sort of crammed up. And so I was unconscious and taken to the hospital, and I remember waking in and out of consciousness in the ambulance, and then in the hospital found out that I had to get 75 stitches in my face. And you're, an impressionable young kid. You find out your, face is half ripped off, but at least you're alive. So it was a very traumatic event at the time. And the guy that was driving was hurt, and there was a girl in the back seat that unfortunately was paralyzed.
Wow.
And so I guess at some point, fairly soon after that, I started to realize that despite this horrific thing that had happened to me, I was incredibly lucky. I was fortunate because I shouldn't be here. It was incredibly sobering when, I remember the fire department or the paramedics telling us, we thought you were dead. And so when somebody tells you, we saw you and we thought you were dead, you think, wow, I'm on the bonus round here. I was more fortunate than either of the two people in the car with me. I'm here alive when maybe I shouldn't be statistically. So why is that? And you have this sense that, I've been given more time for whatever reason, whether it was completely random or whether you believe in God, spirit, higher power, whatever that thing that you believe would cause that to happen. I thought, I better make the best of this extra time I've got because I've been given this gift. That perspective didn't come overnight. It didn't come easy. But over time, I was able to view it as, why not? I shouldn't be here. So why can't I go try this thing? Why can't I dive into this thing? Why can't I, take some chances that... And so I guess I've lived the rest of my life since then. And I started to think about people that I knew, family members and relatives and friends who had gotten older and hadn't taken those chances. And I saw regret in their face, in their eyes. I saw regret in the way that they lived. They hadn't done the things that they wanted. And I made myself a promise when I was in my early 20s saying, I'm never going to live where I look back and say, what if? There will be no what ifs in my life. I'm going to try. If I fail miserably, at least I tried. I won't regret. And so I can't say that I've been 100% successful. There's things you think, well, I would have liked to try that. But I think more than maybe some people, I've been able to just dive into situations and say, what do I have to lose for this? I'm going to apply for this thing. I'm going to try for this thing. I'm going to tell somebody, hey, I want to do this. I'm going to show up at this thing, whether people think I belong there or not, or it's too weird or strange or whatever it is. I want to know. So part of that is really doing exploration over the course of your life, trying everything you can, trying activities, trying, being around different types of people, places where you live, anything that you can do to try. I mean, you have to figure out this is something I like or this is something I don't like. So you have to know those things. You have to try. You have to expand your life's palette. And so I'm always trying to do that, trying to figure out, what is this thing? And so this, for instance, you mentioned yoga. And this past Tuesday, I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary of Kundalini yoga and meditation. And It changed my life. And it's been an incredible help to me. And it's one of those things that I was always fascinated with energy and how it works and how it moves and the concept of chi, for instance. And as I started to learn more about Middle Eastern modalities and of health and healing and exercise and such. And I remember reading about these concepts and thinking, wow, I want to do that. I want to try Tai Chi or, some sort of yoga that involves that, not just, some hatha fitnessy thing, but, the concept of energy and taking it sort of to this next level. And I was interested in science and spirituality and all these things. And so I remember I showed up to this Kundalini yoga class, and I tend to start new habits on my birthday. So whereas most people do, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, we'll start that on New Year's Eve. I tend to start those things on my birthday, which is in February. So just some weird little quirk I started when I was younger. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do this, and if I'm gonna do it, I want to, I showed up the first time, and it was sort of weird but interesting, and I was like, I like how my body feels, I like how this feels to me, so I'll come back. So I went back and back a few more times, and I'm like, this is cool. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to see if I can build a practice. And then just made sure that I kept going and going. And there were years where I would miss, only, 2 classes a year.
Wow.
And there's years where life got busy and I missed a bunch of classes. But I try to maintain my practice at least 2 to 3 times a week, and I try to meditate every day when I can. And it's been tremendous for me. And I would have never known those if I hadn't shown up to some weird class of, if you're just reading the description and it was some strange thing that was brought to the United States by Yogi Bhajan in the late 60s, and it might have scared me away.
Yeah.
And part of that is also finding a place where you can surround yourself with people who don't judge you, who you don't feel like they're sort of, laughing at you, winking at you, whatever. What's that weird thing that Greg's doing, So I'm fortunate enough to live my wife and I moved to a place, Southern California, where there's really nothing too weird or strange or out there for us. So, which is good. It's been good for me.
Yeah. Well, your story is so moving that I had to like force the tears to not come streaming down. And there was something just so important that you said, and I'm going to have it be the little click to tweet underneath. But you did talk about it being the icing on the cake, like this is another opportunity for you to be alive, and that you recognize that why not? Why not try? Why not be curious? Why not try these things that you are interested in and give it a go, and that you saw that regret in other people's eyes and you didn't want to be that person. And you thought, you don't have to be that person. I'm just going to check it out and go to that weird room where they're doing that weird yoga thing and see what it's like or whatever it is. And I just commend you for taking something that you could have used that story against yourself for the rest of your life. Poor me stuff. But you flipped it. You flipped it all around, And I think that you could have also stayed like not driven, you could have really had a small life. But what I've noticed is that you have a giant life. You have a really rich, yummy, scrumptious life, and it continues. It keeps continuing because you're still curious. And I just love that you shared all of that. I think it's just really helpful and meaningful to me. And I know that it will be for many other people. So thank you for your path, the journey that you've been on. It's just really amazing to hear and to witness this shift in perception about the opportunities that you have while you're living. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And part of that shift is I feel like I've been through several of these shifts in my life, sort of paradigm shifts where I'm viewing the world in one lens, and then at some point I'm able to shift over and view the world a little different way. And I think the other crucial shift for me in my life, without getting way too down the woo-woo rabbit hole here, is this notion that there's an interconnection between all of us on the planet here. There's an interconnectivity. Yeah. My father's a physicist, and so part of the curiosity came from growing up with a scientist as a father. Yeah. And he, I learned about quantum physics and the notion of how things were potentially interconnected, even if they weren't necessarily next to each other or local. Yeah. Non-locality in quantum physics. And I also have a spiritual curiosity, and I believe that both of them are saying in their own unique vernacular, in their own unique way, that we are interconnected. And I think that's been a really crucial value for me. And whether that connectivity manifests in being out in the woods with my camera, I'm a photographer, and I'm walking around a trail in the woods, and I feel connected to the forest that I'm in, and I want to reflect that back through a photo, or that connectivity comes through playing music with other people, or finding people like you or this community of yours that we share some common values and some common parameters.
Right.
That connectivity, the more I'm willing to allow that to happen in my life, the more awesome things happen to me.
Bingo! The wisdom bomb just got dropped.
And it's not shutting those things off. I mean, I tend to, I think we all do. We tend to want to shut those things off or ignore them or self-select perceptively what's there and what's not. And sometimes the universe hits me over the head with this big hammer and says, wow, do you realize what are the odds that you found this connection with this person that it would be so random, and yet you have this thing in common and you have this thread in common and you want to do this thing, and then here you are 5 years later, you're working for them, in this project, and then they pop back up again 5 more years later on this seemingly random thing. Yeah. And I'm amazed when that happens. It's happened several times to me lately. It's sort of just as I've started to feel a little disconnected, it's allowed me to remember, like, wow, yeah, there's something crazy going on. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I can't describe it. I'm not going to try to tell anybody else what I think it is, but I believe it's there.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about that when you were talking, because I have huge resistance right before I do an interview. I don't want to do it. I feel like I don't know what to wear, and I don't look good, and I have, whatever it is. I don't feel well. I'm hungry. I
look purple in my Skype camera. Just pointing that out. I don't look purple in real life.
I'm going to try to fix it.
But
yeah, okay. I'm usually yellow on Skype, so there's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, I feel like a lot of resistance, and somebody told me the more you feel, well, in AA, I don't actually attend AA much these days, but one of the wisdom bombs that I heard in AA was the more resistance you feel to going to a meeting, it's probably the perfect meeting to go to. And I feel that way in life too. Like when I'm feeling a lot of resistance about doing an interview, then I know I can't cancel it. There's just something on the other side of that frustration or that wall or that whatever it is, that resistance, that I'm going to find out if I just wait or just show up. And I think that's true. It's slightly different than what you're saying, but it's still connected to what you were saying, how you have no idea how things are going to be connected, and then you meet this person, and then 5 years later you realize that you met them, and then this thing was going to happen that you had no idea was going to happen. It was totally random, but not, And I feel that way when I interview. Like right now, I felt like, oh, I need to cancel. And I feel that way every time, not just you. It's not personal. I think maybe I'm an introvert, and there's a piece of me that's like, I just want to go read, And then I start talking to you, and I'm so curious, and you tell me all these things that I'm getting goosebumps, and I can't believe it, and I'm moved to tears, and I think, thank God I didn't believe myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just so grateful that you shared the wisdom that you did today and that you took the time. I'm feeling a little emotional right now, but I'm very moved by what your life story and the wisdom that you've shared with us today, and the opportunities that you've given to yourself by saying, yes, why not me? So thank you. Thank you for being a part of CtheG TV. And I look forward to seeing you at WDS and making more connections there as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be on your show. Thanks again for your time and having me here.
Thanks. All right. I'm going to see you soon. Ciao.
Absolutely. Ciao.